What happens when a casual morning interview spirals completely out of control, turning into one of the most shocking on-air confrontations in Good Morning America history. When comedian and actress Ali Wentworth sat down for what was supposed to be a lighthearted chat about her latest book, nobody could have predicted that within minutes she would be storming off set after a heated exchange with host George Stephanopoulos that left viewers speechless and the studio in complete chaos. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story will blow your mind. The morning started like any other at Good Morning America. Ali Wentworth, known for her quick wit and comedic timing, had been invited to discuss her new memoir, a funny and heartfelt look at her life in entertainment and marriage to George Stephanopoulos. Yes, you heard that right. She was being interviewed by her own husband on live television, something that had happened several times before without incident. But this morning would be different. As the cameras rolled and the iconic Good Morning America music faded, George flashed his trademark professional smile and began the interview with what seemed like standard pleasantries. Good morning, I'm here with comedian and author Ali Wentworth, who has just released her new book. Ali, thanks for being here. Ali shifted slightly in her chair, something seeming off about her usual bubbly demeanor. Thanks for having me, George, though I have to say, it feels weird being interviewed by my husband on national television. Well, we try to keep things professional here, George replied with a slight chuckle. But there was an edge to his voice that regular viewers might have missed. So tell us about the book. What inspired you to write about some of the more, shall we say, personal aspects of your marriage? The question hung in the air for a moment, and Ali's expression shifted noticeably. Personal aspects. George, we discussed what topics would be covered in this interview, and I thought we agreed to focus on the humor and the broader themes about family life, not dissect our marriage on live television. George leaned forward slightly, his journalistic instincts seemingly taking over. But Ali, you wrote about our arguments, our disagreements about money, even our different parenting styles. Surely you expected questions about these revelations. Revelations. Ali's voice rose just a notch, barely perceptible to viewers but clearly audible to those in the studio. George, these are observations about married life that millions of couples can relate to. I'm not revealing state secrets here. The tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Camera operators exchanged glances, and producers in the control room began to lean forward, sensing that this interview was veering off script. George pressed on, seemingly oblivious to the growing discomfort. But you specifically mentioned a fight we had about my work schedule, where you accused me of prioritizing career over family. How do you think viewers will interpret that? Ali's jaw tightened, and for the first time since the interview began, she looked directly into the camera. Before turning back to George, I think viewers will interpret it as a wife being honest about the challenges of being married to someone in this business. But apparently, my husband thinks it makes better television to ambush me with personal questions that we never discussed beforehand. Ambush. George's professional composure was beginning to crack. Ali, these are legitimate questions about your book. This is journalism. Journalism. Ali let out a laugh that had no humor in it whatsoever. George, this is Good Morning America, not 60 Minutes. And I'm your wife, not a politician you're trying to catch in a scandal. The studio audience, which had been enjoying what they thought would be a light morning interview, was now completely silent. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every uncomfortable moment as the interview descended into something none of them had signed up to witness. George, perhaps realizing he had pushed too far but unable to back down on live television, tried to regain control. Look, Ali, I'm just doing my job here. When someone writes a book, especially about personal relationships, they should expect tough questions. Tough questions. Ali's voice was getting louder now, and there was no hiding the anger in her tone. George, you're treating me like a hostile witness in a deposition. This is supposed to be a fun interview about a humorous book, not an interrogation about our marriage. The camera captured George's face as he seemed to realize, perhaps for the first time, how this was playing out. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. Ali, if you can't handle professional questions about your professional work, maybe you're not ready for this kind of publicity. That was the moment everything changed. Ali's face went from annoyed to absolutely furious in the span of a heartbeat. Are you seriously questioning my professionalism right now? On live television, in front of millions of people? The silence that followed was deafening. George stared at his wife, seemingly stunned by the intensity of her reaction, while Ali glared back with a look that could have melted steel. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented meltdown happening live on morning television. Ali, I think you're overreacting, George said, his voice taking on a condescending tone that made the situation exponentially worse. This is how interviews work. I ask questions, you answer them. It's not personal, not personal. Ali's voice cracked with disbelief. George, everything about this is personal. You're my husband, we're talking about our marriage. And you're treating me like I'm some celebrity you've never met before, who's trying to dodge your hard-hitting questions. George shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly aware that millions of viewers were watching this domestic dispute unfold in real time. Allie, can we please just get back to the book? I have other segments to get to. Oh, now you want to get back to the book? Allie laughed bitterly. After spending the last 10 minutes trying to make me look like some desperate housewife airing dirty laundry for attention. No, George, I think we're way past talking about the book now. The control room was in chaos. Producers were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but the train wreck was so compelling that ratings were probably through the roof. This was the kind of unscripted television drama that people would be talking about for years. George tried once more to salvage the interview, his professional training kicking in. Look, Allie, I apologize if my questions seemed too aggressive. Why don't we start over and talk about the lighter aspects of the book? But Allie was having none of it. Too aggressive. George, you basically just told me I can't handle professional questions about my own work. On national television, do you have any idea how that makes me look? How that makes you look? I was just trying to do a thorough interview, George protested, but his voice lacked conviction now. I treat all my guests the same way. All your guests. Ollie's eyebrows shot up. George, I'm not all your guests. I'm your wife. I sleep in the same bed as you. I make you breakfast. I know exactly how you look when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. This isn't the same as interviewing some politician who's trying to spin their latest scandal. The audience was completely transfixed. This was like watching someone's marriage counseling session broadcast live to the entire country. George looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Allie, please, can we just finish this professionally? George pleaded, glancing nervously at the cameras. Professionally, Allie stood up from her chair, her microphone still clipped to her jacket. You want professional, George? Here's professional. This interview is over. George's eyes widened in panic. Allie, we still have 8 minutes left in this segment. Then I suggest you find something else to talk about for 8 minutes. Allie shot back, reaching for her microphone. Maybe you can interview yourself about why you thought it was a good idea to ambush your wife on live television. You're being ridiculous, George said, his composure finally cracking completely. Sit down and finish the interview. Did you just tell me I'm being ridiculous? Allie's voice rose to a level that probably woke up half the East Coast. And did you just order me to sit down? On live television, in front of millions of people. George realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant you meant exactly what you said. George, Allie interrupted, her hands shaking slightly as she fumbled with her microphone clip. You think I'm being ridiculous for not wanting to be treated like a hostile witness in my own marriage. You think you can order me around because we're on your show. This isn't my show, Allie. This is Good Morning America. Right now, George, this is the George Stephanopoulos show, where George gets to be the tough journalist who doesn't let personal relationships get in the way of hard-hitting questions. Even when the person he's grilling is the mother of his children, the mention of their children seemed to hit George like a physical blow. Allie, don't bring the kids into this. I'm not bringing them into anything, George. But they're going to see this. Their friends are going to see this. Everyone we know is going to see their parents having a knockdown drag-out fight on national television because you decided to play hardball journalist with your own wife. George looked around the studio desperately, as if hoping someone would rescue him from this nightmare. Allie, we can talk about this at home. No, George, we can't talk about this at home, because you made the decision to air our dirty laundry on live television. So now we get to deal with the consequences on live television. Allie finally managed to unclip her microphone and dropped it on the coffee table between them with a loud thud that echoed through the studio. The sound of the microphone hitting the table reverberated through the stunned silence of the studio. George stared at the abandoned microphone, then looked up at his wife, who was now standing over him with a mixture of hurt and fury in her eyes that millions of viewers would never forget. Allie, please don't do this, George said quietly, his voice barely audible without her microphone to pick it up. But Allie's response was loud enough for everyone to hear. Do what, George? Stand up for myself. Refuse to be humiliated on national television by my own husband. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do this. George looked directly into the camera, then back at Allie, clearly torn between his role as a television host and his role as a husband. We have millions of people watching. Allie, we can't just leave them hanging. You should have thought about those millions of people before you decided to turn what was supposed to be a fun interview into a public execution. Allie replied, grabbing her purse from beside her chair. You want to give them a show, George? Well, congratulations. This is definitely a show they'll never forget. The camera operators were getting conflicting signals from the control room. Do they keep filming? Do they cut away? This was uncharted territory for morning television, and no one seemed to know the protocol for when a host's marriage implodes live on air. Ali, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, George said, standing up from his chair and reaching toward her. I got carried away with the interview. Can we please just sit back down and finish this? Ali stepped back from his outstretched hand. You're sorry? George, you just spent 15 minutes trying to make me look like some attention-seeking housewife who writes books to embarrass her husband. And now you're sorry because it's not playing well for the cameras. That's not what I was trying to do, George protested, but even he seemed to realize how weak that sounded. Then what were you trying to do, George? Because from where I'm standing, it looked like you were trying to prove what a tough, uncompromising journalist you are. By going after your own wife, was that supposed to be impressive? Was that supposed to show everyone how professional you are? George ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that anyone who knew him recognized as a sign of extreme stress. I was just doing my job, Ali, your job. Ali's laugh was sharp and bitter. George, your job was to have a pleasant conversation with an author about her book. Your job was not to psychoanalyze our marriage on live television. Your job was not to make me defend writing about the normal ups and downs that every married couple experiences. The studio audience was completely silent, unsure whether they should applaud, boo, or just sit in stunned silence. This was far beyond anything they had expected when they showed up for a taping of Good Morning America. Ali, can we please just talk about this off camera? George pleaded, glancing nervously at the rolling cameras. Off camera, Ali shook her head in amazement. George, you had 24 hours to talk to me off camera about what questions you were planning to ask. You had the entire car ride to the studio this morning to mention that you were planning to grill me about our personal life, but you chose to ambush me on live television instead. I wasn't trying to ambush you, George said, but his voice lacked any conviction. Then what would you call it, George? Because I call it an ambush when your husband pretends to be supportive about your book for weeks, then gets you on live television and starts asking questions designed to make you look bad. I call it an ambush when you use your platform as a respected journalist to attack your own wife. George looked around the studio desperately, as if hoping someone would cut to commercial and end this nightmare. But the cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of this unprecedented television disaster. I never attacked you, Ali. You questioned my professionalism, George. On live television, you suggested I couldn't handle tough questions about my own work. You treated me like some celebrity trying to hide something scandalous instead of your wife who wrote a funny book about married life. I was just trying to ask substantive questions, George said weakly. Substantive questions. Ali's voice rose again. George, asking me why I wrote about our arguments isn't substantive. It's invasive. Asking me to justify writing about normal married couple disagreements isn't journalism. It's harassment. The control room had given up any pretense of managing this situation. This was live television gold, the kind of unscripted drama that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. Ali, please, I'm begging you, sit back down. We can turn this around, George said, his desperation now obvious to everyone watching. Turn this around. Ali shouldered her purse and looked directly into the camera. George, there's no turning this around. You made a choice to humiliate me on national television, and now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. She turned and started walking toward the edge of the set, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor. George called after her, his voice cracking slightly. Ali, where are you going? We still have 6 minutes left. Without turning around, Ali called back. I'm going home. George, you can fill the remaining 6 minutes explaining to America why you thought it was appropriate to ambush your wife on live television. And with that, Ali Wentworth walked off the Good Morning America set, leaving her husband standing alone, in front of millions of viewers, holding her abandoned microphone and trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of one of the most disastrous interviews in morning television history. The cameras lingered on George's stunned face for what felt like an eternity before finally cutting to commercial, leaving viewers across the country wondering what they had just witnessed, and whether the Stephanopoulos marriage would survive this very public meltdown. What do you think George should have done differently in this situation? Drop a comment below and make sure to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.